Well, the title of this talk is So You Want to Run a Perl Event, and the intended audience is anybody that obviously has an interest in running some kind of Perl event, whether that be a hackathon or a Perl workshop or a YAPC or really anything. And most of this talk is ambivalent to Perl, so this is probably applicable to most open source events in general. I know most of the people in the room, so I'm assuming most of you know me, but for anybody that's following along at home, my name is Daniel Wright, and I've run a few Perl events. I've run 5 different Pittsburgh Perl workshops as well as 1 YAPC. And so what I'm going to do is try to share some of my experiences and the tidbits that I've learned along the way in an effort to help you get past some of those roadblocks a little bit faster. But really, I think the entire talk can be summed up in one very simple slide. It takes a special kind of masochist to want to run a Perl event. You have to be able to twist your head a certain way and enjoy what you're doing. It can be a very rewarding process, and if you're into it, I'm here to help you any way that I can. So let's talk about putting together a Perl event. I guess the first question would be to ask, well, where do you start? And the answer is you start by putting together your team. Because unless you are really into running events and you have the time to dedicate to just basically being a full-time event organizer, it's going to require multiple people to organize your event. And when it comes down to actually running your event, there's no question about it, you can't be everywhere at once. So putting on a Perl event is not a one-person job. So the first thing that you need to do once you have your team together and you're all gung-ho and excited about running a Perl event, and I'm going to keep saying Perl event because it could be a YAPC, it could be a Perl workshop, anything really applies, and each type of event has different nuances. But you need to develop a vision for your event. And when I say develop a vision, I mean come up with some ideas as far as how big you want this event to be, how tightly organized you want it to be. Do you want it to be an event where there's no schedule and everybody just shows up and hacks and a couple people might stand up and talk? Or do you want it to be more YAPC-like where all the talks are scheduled well ahead of time and everybody knows where everything's going on at any moment? You need to get an idea for what kind of cost you're looking at. And when I talk about cost, right now I'm talking about how much are you going to spend on this event. You know, you could all get together at a truck stop, or find some cheap hotel and just all get together in a conference room and work on stuff, or get a big conference center and put on all the polish and trimmings. And there's no right answer. Every event has its own vision. Every event has its own nuances, and that's great. That's what makes this awesome is you get to make those decisions as an organizer. You also need to decide how you're going to divide the labor. Are you going to be a group with one chief and many Indians? Are you going to be a group with many chiefs that all work together? And again, there's no right answer to this. For the Pittsburgh Perl workshop, we've had during various workshops, we've had up to 4 organizers that all work together as peers. And if you can do it, there's a lot of strength in that. Or you may prefer to just have one person calling the shots and a bunch of volunteers helping out. And whatever you want, that's fine, as long as you all agree on it. So there's a term, being rigidly flexible. And what I mean by that is you need to be willing to make compromises along the way and say, okay, this plan isn't going to work out. We're going to need to make some changes, or, oh, we didn't think about this, so we're going to have to account for that. But at the same time, on day one, you can't start out with the attitude of we're going to cover every single possible path down the road. So you have to be able to say, these are the areas that we're willing to bend on a little bit, and these are the areas that we're just going to write off from the start and say, no, this is not what we want our event to end up being. And you'll have to commit to some of that as well. And finally, on vision, really do this. When you're starting out organizing an event, especially the first event, it's really exciting. It's wow, we're going to host an event. This is going to be cool. And it's really easy to say, we don't want to take time to figure all this out right now. We'll cover it when we get to it. But the truth is, if you don't start out with a very strong vision of what you want your event to be, then you're going to be redoing all of this every step along the way. Do it right the first time, and you'll have a much happier event. You'll get to the event, and all of your organizers will still like each other. Speaking of organizers, events have personalities. And the personality of an event is typically a mashup of the attitudes of all your organizers. And that can be anything from a really laid-back, relaxed Perl workshop to a really high-polished YAPC, anything in between. And again, there's no wrong answer for this, but you want your personality to be unique. You don't want to look at another conference and say, we want to be exactly like that. You need to come up with your own personality to give your own event that distinctiveness that makes people want to come back to it next year. Okay, so you've got a group of people together. You have talked about your vision, and you all have a good idea of what you want to do. The next step, an optional step, really, is to talk to the Perl Foundation. You want to come talk to myself as the treasurer, or talk to the conferences committee and say, hey, we want to run a Perl event. You don't have to do that. If you just want to go out and do your own event, you're free to do so. But we have a lot of resources that are available that you may not have on your own, especially starting out. And I encourage you to take advantage of them. When you talk to the Perl Foundation, some of the first questions that we're going to try to address with you is, who owns the event? When you come to YAPC, you are coming to an event of the Perl Foundation. TPF owns and operates the YAPC through an annually appointed organizer. But if you're doing a Perl workshop or some hackathon, then you may very well say, well, we want this to be a production of our local Perlmonger group. And that's fine. We don't care. We're not out to control your event. But we want to establish from the get-go what kind of event this is, because that's going to establish the rules as far as how much involvement TPF is going to have. And one of those rules is going to be, how is the money handled? If you're running an event and you want TPF to handle your books, we can do that for you. We can accept all your sponsorship income. We can accept all of your registration income, and we can handle writing all your checks for you. If it's a TPF event, we'll even go as far as fronting the money. So if you need a down payment on your venue, we can do that for you. If it's your event, we're only going to write checks as far as the amount of money you've collected so far, and then it's going to be the responsibility of your group to make up the difference. If it's a TPF event, when the event's over, any surplus goes to TPF. Any deficit, TPF will cover. If it's your event, then your group is going to be responsible for covering any deficit. If there's any surplus, we will keep that in an escrow for you. Since people are writing out checks to the Perl Foundation, and we're a 501c3, we can't just cut you a check at the end of the event and say, here's your profit. But what we can do is we can keep that money in an escrow for you, and you can apply it towards running your event the following year. Or if you want to say, we want to take our money and donate it to this grant or this other event, or whatever, we can work with you and do that. That's fine. We'll also talk to you about what kind of services do you need. Do you want us to accept payments? Do you need liability insurance? And some other things I'll get into. Okay, so you've got a group together. You've established a relationship with TPF if you want. And the next thing you need to do is start looking for a venue. This can get really tricky. So start working on this as early as possible. Venues come in all shapes and sizes and costs. Generally speaking, you're going to be dealing with a trade-off of costs versus services. The more legwork you're willing to do, the more likely you are to get a reasonably priced venue. But when you get into, if you're at some small college campus and all you need is a couple classrooms where everybody can sit and talk, you can probably get that pretty cheap. But if what you really want is a place where you can tell them, we want all the tables arranged like this, we want tables outside for a registration area, we want this room arranged this way so that all of our sponsors have tables. The moment you start asking them to do that prep work for you, that's where the costs start coming in. It really helps if you have an in with the event, if you know somebody. A lot of events are held on college campuses, so if you have a contact with maybe a student organization there, or a professor or a dean or somebody that can convince the college that you are a good thing for them, they're more likely to cut you a deal. So it helps if you can find somebody to do that for you. Probably one of the most important things that I can stress, and one of the things that I would like everybody to take away from this talk, is that when you're dealing with venues, there is no such thing as standard. If you're talking to a salesperson from a venue and they say, we're going to offer all of these things standard, ask them exactly what they mean by that. Because there is no standards when it comes to venues. If you walk into a room and there are wall outlets along the wall, don't assume that you can plug something into them for free. Because the first 12 venues you check out might say, oh yeah, that's standard, that's part of the room. But if you walk into the 13th venue and assume that that comes with the room, you may be in for a rude awakening when you get your bill. There is no standard. There is no such thing as over-specification. We had a problem at one of our Perl workshops where we had rented AV equipment to, basically it was a large room and it was a PA system that was built into the room so that we could have a microphone up at the podium. And the AV equipment is sitting in the room with an audio out jack. And we're saying, okay, well, we're going to plug in a laptop into that AV out, the audio out jack, so that we can record our talks. And even though we've rented the microphones, we've rented the podium, we've rented the AV system, they tell us, well, if you want to plug something into that, that's an extra $250. This is the way conference places work. That's the way they think. So just because something's there, don't assume that it's free. Depending on where you're going, depending on what kind of relationship you have with your venue, they're probably going to require you to provide some sort of liability insurance to cover them in the event that something goes wrong with your event. And this is one of the places where TPF can help you, because we carry a general liability insurance policy, and we can provide proof of insurance for you. I would say, if you want to use TPF's insurance, you need to get me the contract with the exact requirements as soon as possible, so that I can go back to our insurance company, review it with them, and make sure that they add that venue to our policy in adequate time for your event. Don't forget to ask them about their network capability. As we were talking about earlier in this event, one of the ways that you judge a YAPC is by how long the Wi-Fi holds out before it crashes. And it's true. Perl programmers are not regular conference attendees when it comes to network usage. A lot of these conference venues are used to events with 400 or 500 people, and maybe a couple of them will have a laptop, or several of them may have their iPhone and they check their email every once in a while. Venues most likely are not used to this kind of network traffic. So you really need to stress with them and explain to them exactly what kind of demands you're going to put on their network. And then when they are done assuring you that it'll be perfectly fine, that's when you say, I need to talk to one of your IT people. Because just because they're telling you it'll be fine, you need to talk to somebody that understands what you're talking about. Another thing you have to realize about venues is they're trying to maximize the amount of income they can make on every single room. Especially if they're if it's a college campus and you're talking about classrooms, it's not such a big deal. But if you're talking about a big conference facility, if you go into that conference facility and say, our event runs from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. 4 days in a row, they're going to rent you that room from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. 4 days in a row. And if they can find somebody that will rent that room from 7 p.m. to 9 p.m. on the third day of your conference, they will do so. And what that means is, if you had any equipment set up in that room, you need to make sure you take it down every single day and come in the following day and put it back up. So when you're dealing with your venues, talk to them about when exactly are you getting the room. And preferably, you want to tell them that you want the room 24 hours a day. Also, we ran into a problem at one of our Perl workshops where we had rented a block of rooms, and the room right next to us, they rented out to a group doing square dancing. So you also want to communicate to them that you're putting on a big conference. It's a professional event. You don't want to have music blaring from the room next door while you're putting on your event. The next biggest hurdle you will have will be food service. And you're going to have to decide what kind of food you're going to serve. When you come to a Pittsburgh Perl workshop, we give you breakfast, snack, lunch, snack, and then often a dinner afterwards. When you come to a YAPC, you're on your own for breakfast and lunch, and you get snacks. Again, there's no wrong answer here as long as you communicate with your attendees well in advance what to expect. If you're dealing with a professional conference venue that has their own food service, or if you're dealing with a large college campus that has a food service, most likely those venues are going to have exclusive contracts, and you're going to be required to use their food service. So if you want to say, hey, we'd like to order in pizza for everybody on one of our days, they're probably going to tell you no, because they're under contract with their food service that nobody else is going to bring food into their venue. So you need to discuss that with your venue early and see what they will allow you to do. Also, you're going to have to discuss with them what can be done about the leftovers. A lot of places are going to tell you, for liability reasons, anything that they serve has to be thrown away at the end of the event. If you don't like that, you're going to have to negotiate it out with them. I really like what DCBPW did this last year with buying the takeout containers and then dishing out the leftovers and giving them to people as they traveled home. I think that was a really ingenious idea. When you talk to food service, you're going to call in two different numbers. You're going to have to give them an estimate of about how many people you're going to serve. And that estimate's usually going to go in maybe 2 to 3 weeks ahead of your event. So you may say, we think we're going to have about 120 people. But then they're going to want you to call in a final number. And you're going to have to find out how much lead time they want. They'll give you a deadline. And they'll say, if your event starts on a Friday, we need to have your final numbers, say, the Tuesday before. And that's the point where you're going to have to say, okay, this is how many registrations we have. This is how many we think we're going to get in the next few days. This is our final number. And then your food service will bring enough food for that number of people. And they will charge you for that number of people, regardless of how many people actually show up to your event. So talk to your food service, find out when they need the final numbers. If they're any good, they'll probably tell you 3 to 4 days before the event. If they want more time than that, they probably don't do a lot of food service. Also, check with them about special dietary considerations. We have vegetarians, we have vegans, we have a lot of special dietary requests at Perl events, and just find out from them if they're going to be able to prepare a couple of special dishes for some of your participants. It's going to come up. Now, estimating your numbers. Hopefully your food service is going to be good enough that you're just going to have to tell them, we have this number of people, and they'll bring enough food. Usually, if they're any good, they're going to bring extra food just in case. But they're going to charge you for whatever number you tell them. It has been my experience, and if you go downstairs right now and look in the snack room and take a look at exactly how many donuts have been taken out of the snack room so far, you will see that generally Perl programmers hate breakfast. So if you have 150 people coming to your event, you may only want to tell them to bring enough breakfast for 60 people, because people don't usually like to get breakfast. I think it's because they prefer to sleep in. On the other hand, we drink a lot of coffee. A lot of coffee. And I am not a coffee connoisseur, so I can't give you exact numbers on that, but I know people that are, and if that's a concern for you, I can get you in touch with the right people that can give you data about how much coffee Perl developers drink. And actually, we do have some data online from past Pittsburgh Perl workshops that I can give you exact numbers from. Water and soda, consider about 2 drinks per person per day is about the average. And that's water, bottles of water and cans of soda combined. And of course, geography makes a big difference in all of this. Here in Wisconsin, we have State Street just a block down with all sorts of places you can eat. So you're not going to have a lot of people relying on food from the venue. But if you're in some other place where it's more remote and people can't walk to find food, they're going to be more dependent on food from your venue, so you're going to need to be prepared for more of your attendees to actually want to eat your food. Okay, you've talked to the venue, you've talked to food service, you've got a plan. The next thing you need to do is start talking to the Perl community. And the first thing to do is put together a website. Don't take too long. It is far too easy to get bogged down in trying to make your conference website absolutely perfect. And you say, well, it's not quite there yet. I'm going to wait another day and put some more work into it before I release. And before you know it, you've spent 3 weeks working on your website. Get it out there as quickly as possible. It doesn't have to be pretty. It's not going to be perfect. Deal with it. Get it out there, release early, release often. The conference toolkit that most conferences have been using in the past several years is called ACT. It was written by the French Perl mongers, and it's free and available for anybody that wants to use it. It's open source, but there's also free hosting for it. So if anybody wants to set up an ACT website for an event, you can join the ACT discussion list, and they'll set up an instance of their site, their tool for you, and they're also there to give you help and guidance along the way in using it. I also have this link down here on the bottom, which this is a really good essay that was written on what kind of stuff you want to consider in terms of what do people come to your website to find out about. And it gives you a list of here's things you want to make sure you cover on your website. And I'll have these slides up somewhere when this is done. Okay, you've got your website up. Announce. Announce early, announce often, in as many channels as you can. One of the best places to announce your event is at YAPC. So get up and give a lightning talk about your event. Get on every mailing list you can find and talk about your event. Post it on Perl Monks. Post it on any place you can find. And don't forget local user groups too. It doesn't have to be Perl specific. If you have a Linux users group in your area, post to it. Pricing. You're going to have to decide how much it's going to cost for people to come to your event. It would be really, really nice if we could make all Perl events free. But the reality is, if you want to have a big polished event, you're probably going to have to charge some money for people to show up. So here's a rough guideline to consider. Take all of the per person costs that you're going to have to pay. If that's, how much are you paying per head for food? How much are you paying for each person's T-shirt? If you have to pay a per user fee for Wi-Fi, anything that you have to pay, add all of those per person costs together. That is your minimum price. You do not want to charge anybody less than that amount. If you do, and your event becomes large, your pricing model will not scale. I'm not saying you can't charge more than that. You should charge more than that, because you're going to have people that are going to come to your event for free. You're going to have fixed costs that you have to cover. But hopefully a lot of that you're going to be able to cover with your sponsors. But as a minimum, don't charge less than what your per person actual costs are. Now, we want people to register as soon as possible so we have a good idea of how many are coming. One way of doing that is to have a graduating scale of costs that continuously increases as you get closer to your event. So you can have this is our early fee, this is our regular registration fee, and this is our late registration fee. And that'll help encourage people to register sooner rather than later. And when you're considering pricing, don't forget there's going to be stuff that you're going to have to pay for that you just didn't think of yet, or things that just come at you out of the blue that have never been a problem before, but all of a sudden this costs money now. So be prepared for that when you put together your budget. And I can help anybody that needs help with budgeting. I can share past PPW budgets. I can help you work with your budget. I'm available as a resource. You're going to have to recruit speakers. There's the saying, if you build it, they will come. It's not true. It's not true. Some speakers will step up and say, yes, here's some talks that I'll give. But there's going to be a lot of people that aren't going to submit talks until you personally reach out to them and say, We really need you to talk. And when you're recruiting speakers, you need to be thinking in terms of your target audience. You're going to have some people that have been doing this for a long time, and hopefully you're going to have some people that are coming to your event as their first Perl event ever. So you're going to need to have advanced talks and also beginner talks. It's going to be a lot easier to find advanced Perl speakers because most of the people that give talks are advanced Perl programmers. They're going to be interested in talking about the stuff that they're doing. Getting people to talk about things that are beginner topics is harder. So expect to have to do some arm twisting to get beginner talks out of people. I would personally start with that and then allow the advanced talks to trickle in on their own. Just because people say, yes, I will come to your event and give a talk, does not mean that they actually will. You're going to have everything from somebody contacting you 3 weeks before to say, oh, it turns out I have to move, I just got a new job, I can't come to your event, to the, hey, I know my talk's in 4 hours from now, but it turns out that my airplane's stuck in the snow and I can't make it. And you need to be prepared with backup talks. A good strategy there is you will have some people that will submit 3 or 4 talks to your event. And what you can do is say, we'd really like you to give this talk, but could you also have this other one that you submitted ready just in case we need it? And there you have a speaker that's already coming to your event and is committed and is also prepared with an extra talk just in case you need it. Speakers are important. If you're having a hackathon, it's not such a big deal. But if you're doing a YAPC or a Perl workshop, it's going to be a big deal. People aren't going to sign up for your event until they know who's speaking. So don't expect registrations to really pick up until you start announcing the names of your speakers. You're going to need sponsors. The more sponsors you have, the easier your life is. All of your stress goes away the moment you finally realize you have enough money to pay for everything. Believe me. Assign liaisons to every sponsor. Maybe it's one person deals with all the sponsors. Maybe a couple people split up the job. It doesn't matter. But each sponsor has one person at your event that they know they can come to and talk to about any requests, any concerns. And there's one person at your event that is responsible for making sure that they are happy. We want our sponsors to be happy so that they continue to sponsor us. Sponsors want to know what they're getting for their money, and you need to have lots of options available for them. What kind of things are you prepared to offer them? Are you prepared to put their logo on a shirt? Are you prepared to make giant signs about them? Are you prepared to say, if you give us this much money, then we will give you credit for sponsoring the social event? Come up with big lists and be creative. Come up with as many things. And it helps to know what sponsors want. Some sponsors come to your event because they want to get their name out in the community. Some sponsors come to your event because they want to recruit Perl developers. Some sponsors sponsor your event just because they love Perl and they like what you're doing. And if you know your sponsor and you know what they're looking for, you can tailor the list and have a better relationship with them. And this is one place where TPF can help you. We have a lot of people that already have established contacts with various companies, and we can help you as far as collecting payments. A lot of places are going to say, yeah, we'll give you $500. We just need you to write out an invoice. So you contact me, I generate an invoice on behalf of the Perl Foundation, mail it to them, they'll mail the money back, and it goes into your account. Okay, so we've got sponsors, we've got speakers, we've got a team, we've got a venue, we've got food service. It's time to finally open up registration. Open registration as early as you can, because registrations will trickle in slowly, and you want to start that process as early as possible, because the closer you get to the event, the more important it's going to be to know how many people you have coming. And the earlier you open registration, the more people are going to actually come, because people need a lot of time to plan to come to an event. They need to take off time. They need to book air flight, a hotel, etc., etc. Okay, this is an actual graph over time of a Pittsburgh Perl workshop in terms of the total number of participants registered. Can anybody look at that graph and get an idea of exactly when we announced who our speakers would be? I can't stress that enough. Get your speaker list out there as quickly as possible. Announce your event over and over and over again. Every time you get out there in people's faces about your event, you will have a couple more people sign up. And the more you communicate with the community about your event, the happier people are going to be about it. T-shirts. You don't have to do T-shirts at your event. But if you want to do T-shirts, this is a chart that we've kind of developed over the years for the Pittsburgh Perl Workshop. So we have sizes on the left side and percentage of your total registration on the right side. And so, for example, if we have 100 people that we know are coming to our event, we're going to take 100. We're going to order 15 shirts that are small. We're going to order 30 shirts that are medium, 35 shirts that are large, 45 extra large, and 45 extra large. If you do that math, you're going to see that we ordered more than 100 shirts. It's because you can't trust what people tell you about the sizes they want. Even if you require them to tell you what size shirt they want, you're going to run into speakers that you never got a hold of. You're going to have staff, and you're going to have people that told you large, but they really meant extra large. So buy a couple extra shirts. It'll make everybody so much happier. If you have somebody show up at your event and you don't have the right size shirt to hand them, it's the worst thing in the world. It is as if you had taken mud off the ground and thrown it in their face. Yeah. That's true. If you don't have women's shirts, then all the women are in that position.
2 years ago, I had ACT change their shirts. They added women's sizes to ACT.
Okay.
So if you use ACT actually has it should. This one doesn't do the opposite.
Here's the thing, though, if you ask women for their shirt size and allow women as options, and then they turn up and you don't have shirts, that's even worse.
Yeah, so and that's true for anything. If you make the option available in the registration system, you better be prepared to provide it if someone has actually asked for it. It doesn't matter if it's shirts or food choices or anything. If you put in your registration system that this option is available and somebody asks for it, make sure that you have it there. Moving on. Social events. It doesn't matter what kind of activity you're doing. People are going to expect some kind of social event. It may be very low-key. We're all going out to the bar at the end of the night. Or it may be we're renting out some big facility and, going to a nightclub for a night. They're going to want something. And the best thing that you can do is start planning your social event early. If you have the people, take somebody and put them in charge of the social event and make that their one and only job. Because I will tell you, social events is something that always gets forgotten until the very end. We've got all the details of the event put together. We've got all the shirts ordered, all the badges printed, all the foods taken care of. Okay, what did we forget? Oh yeah, what are we doing for a social event? Well, I don't know. Let's try to find a place. Well, sorry, everybody was booked like 3 weeks ago. Put somebody in charge of the social event. Make that their number one priority. Get the social event taken care of early. If this is your first time running an event, you may not know how many people are coming, and you're going to have to try to find some place that's going to be very elastic in terms of how many you can bring. If you call up a place and say, we might have somewhere between 20 and 300 people coming, they're going to laugh at you. So, you may not be able to book a venue for your social exclusively your first time around until you have a good idea of how many people are going to be there. Yes? So the comment was, it's a very good thing to have the information about your social event actually on the schedule for people. I agree. Another reason you want dedicated people to take care of your social event is about halfway through the day of your actual event, those people are going to need to get up and leave and go to your social venue to make sure that everything is set up and ready for whenever the participants arrive. If you have one of your key organizers in charge of your social event, then that means that one of your key organizers is going to be missing for half the day. And that doesn't work out so well. So make sure you have an advanced team that can get there and get things set up, and they know what they're doing, and you don't have to be a part of that. You're also going to have to consider, how are you going to get people there? Leading up to your event, leading up to day one, are all the contracts signed? If there's anything that the Perl Foundation needs to sign, if you're entering into a billing agreement with a venue and they want a contract signed ahead of time, then you need to get that to me as early as possible. Don't send something to me the day before your event and expect to have it signed and faxed back to them the same day. So get that stuff to me as early as possible so that we can get the contract signed, we can get all payments arranged as soon as possible. You want to talk to your sponsors. If you've made arrangements with your sponsors and they're on their way and everything's fine, call them anyway. Maybe a week or 2 weeks before your event actually happens, call them, touch base. Go over all the agreements that you have with them in terms of, we're going to have a table for you, we're going to have 2 chairs, we're going to have this, you're bringing these people. Just go over it with them. Make sure that nothing changed and they forgot to tell you. You want to keep your sponsors happy. Do the same thing with your speakers. Yes, they submitted a paper. Yes, they wrote back and said, yes, I'm coming. Contact them anyway. Just say, hey, just a reminder, you're coming to talk at my event next week, in case you forgot. And you can disguise it. You can say, oh, and here's some information about the display system, and here's stuff that you need to know about the schedule. And just remind them that, hey, you said you'd come talk for me. And again, communicate with your attendees. I think that's been a recurring theme here. Communicate with your attendees. If you have an awesome event and you never spoke to the attendees ahead of the event, if you never sent out any kind of email, you never sent out any kind of blog posts, people aren't going to notice the fact that you had an awesome event. They're going to be complaining about the fact that there was no communication ahead of time. So even if it's just putting up a Facebook page or something and saying, hey, everything's on schedule, everything's going great, let them know that you're actually working on things. They like to hear that. Okay, so you get to day one of your event. First thing, get there early, because you don't know what you're going to have to deal with. I would say, at a bare minimum, take whatever time registration is supposed to start, be there at least 90 minutes before that. You don't know what you're going to run into. Because when you went to meet with that salesperson at the venue, you probably went at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. You weren't there at 5 o'clock in the morning. So you don't want to show up when registration's about to start and find out that they forgot to unlock the doors. That stuff happens. So get there early so that if there's any problems, you can deal with it. Number one priority, before you do anything else, when you get there, get the coffee going. Okay? Because you will get a massive rush of people when they first show up. The first thing they want is coffee, and you need to make sure that you have enough of it prepared so that you can meet that initial demand. Right.
And it takes a long time.
Right. doing coffee for a big group is not the same as brewing coffee for yourself in your house first thing in the morning. It takes a while to make a lot of coffee, especially if you're making good coffee. Second priority, get your registration table set up. Get all your stuff organized and laid out, and make sure that you have people that are prepared to sit there, and just be prepared for people to walk in. Third priority, make sure the Wi-Fi works. Make sure that the Wi-Fi works, and have somebody sit down with the instructions that you've printed out on how to get onto the Wi-Fi. Make sure that they make sense. Make sure the passwords work. We run into this with the Pittsburgh Perl Workshop a lot, where we go in and we talk to them on Tuesday, and they give us a whole long list of usernames and passwords. And we say, this is for an event this weekend. And they say, oh, yeah, no problem. We get there on Saturday morning, go to start using these passwords, and we find out that they expired because we didn't log in with them within the first 48 hours that they were issued. And you need to have time to deal with that. Once you get those out of the way, go get the rest of your events set up. A couple things to watch out for. Your key organizers should not be tasked to any jobs. There's going to be stuff that comes up that you did not expect. There's going to be people with problems that you have to deal with. There's going to be security guards that are asking, why the heck are you here? You're going to run into all sorts of problems, and you need people that don't have a job already to be able to deal with that. Because if you've got your organizers tasked to something, and then something comes up, something's going to get dropped so that things can be dealt with. Make sure you have people whose job it is to make sure that the talks stay on schedule. Speakers, such as myself, tend to go over on their time. So you need to have someone there to make sure that they don't go over too bad, that you keep things rolling. Because if somebody at the beginning of the day takes way too long, then it just cascades down for the rest of the day. Keep printed schedules posted everywhere. Okay, the interweb is a great thing, but only if the Wi-Fi works. Make sure you have printed copies available and posted everywhere so people don't have to pull up their iPad every single time to see what the schedule says. Okay, your event's winding down. Make sure that you have some kind of survey that people can take. Barbie does the surveys. There's a survey system that's available out there, and you can use it for free and have surveys done of your event, and it's basically a no-op for you. So take advantage of that. Make sure you get all the receipts sent in to me so that I can cut the checks. Have a plan for your leftover food. Make sure you take the time to send out thank you letters to everybody, especially your sponsors. A thank you letter will make the difference between a $500 sponsorship next year and a $2,000 sponsorship. What's that? Handwrite your sponsor. Yeah, handwrite your thank yous. Don't send out form letters. It's very obvious when you do that. So, and finally,
Dan,
yes.
Barbie says to tell you that it's yapsy-surveys.org.
Thank you. yapsy-surveys.org. So, and finally, write down what you've learned. If for no other reason that I can integrate your notes into my talk for next year. But hopefully, over time, more people will write down what they've learned, and we get a better knowledge base, and this is useful for the entire community, especially yourself. And I'm out of time. So there is a Yapsy BOF at noon, and if anybody has comments and suggestions and questions, we can pick it up there. Thank you.